How are you guys doing? Today is Wednesday, March 30th, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile on Alex Bregman. The elite third baseman and infielder for the Houston Astros turns 28 today, and what I'm going to do for this episode is, of course, I'm going to zoom in and give a quick overview outlook of what he's been able to do since the moment that he stepped foot in the show. And of course, I'm going to look on a micro level to see what he's been doing game in, game out, season in, season out, to, of course, establish himself as not only one of the best players at his position, but a very elite one as well, a consistently elite player. And of course, I'm going to zoom out and look at how he's been able to impact his team, his organization, and his sport on a macro level, as Alex Bregman is actually a very influential baseball player. Alex Bregman, I guess the best way to really describe his game is that he's a very underrated contact hitter. And of course, he has a lot of power in his hit. And of course, he can play amazing defense. But I do think that the characteristic that really sets him apart is his eye. I think he has an incredible eye. And the fact that I think that he can really read these pitches and even just like a lot of these reactions, which allows him to play hot corner a lot easier. But I think that Alex Bregman is just a player, once he's really tapped into that zone, he can be unstoppable. So I digress, getting into his story. Coming out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, he would go on to be the first high school player ever to win the USA Baseball Player of the Year. He would, of course, go on, and this was while he was a sophomore in high school that he was named the USA Baseball Player of the Year. But after being one of the best high school prospects that people had seen, he, of course, would go on to bat .678 as a junior in high school. And then he would go on to be the first overall draft pick out of high school, but then he would go on to shatter a knuckle in his throwing hand after he would deflect a ball off of a ground hop. So he missed most of his senior season. But he would be drafted by the Red Sox initially in 2012 in the 29th round of 2012 as a second baseman. So he decided to go to LSU to improve his stock. At LSU, he would go on to play 3 seasons, as of course the rules are kind of weird with baseball where you can either leave after 1, 3, or 4 years, but not 2. In his 3 seasons at LSU, he would go on to be voted the National Freshman of the Year in his very first season there. He would, of course, go on to be named a 2-time All-American by the end of the junior year of college. He would, of course, go on to be taken with the 2nd overall pick by the Houston Astros in the 2015 MLB draft. He was taken right behind Dansby Swanson, who is now the shortstop for the Braves, He was taken by the Arizona Diamondbacks out of Vanderbilt, number 1. The only other all-stars taken in the first round of his draft were Walker Buehler, who is now a starting pitcher for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and Mike Soroka, who was drafted with the 28th pick in the compensatory round by the Atlanta Braves out of high school. Walker Buehler was taken out of Vanderbilt just alongside Dansby Swanson, by the way. So, of course, this would see Alex Bregman get drafted pretty high out of college, and after 2015, it wouldn't even take him that long. He would make his debut in the MLB in 2016 in his age 22 season. In his age 22 season, he went on to play 49 games in a season where the Astros finished with an 84-78 record. They would finish with the 3rd best record in the American League West. In this season, Dallas Keuchel would win the Gold Glove, and Jose Altuve would go on to win his Silver Slugger. This is the 3rd year in a row Altuve had won the Silver Slugger, by the way. The year after Correa had won the Rookie of the Year. But in Bregman's rookie season, he would go on to finish with 53 hits in his 49 games. That's 4 more hits than games played. He had 39 runs on the season. He even had 13 doubles, 8 home runs, 34 RBIs. Looking at how his numbers looked on the year, he finished with a .264 batting average and a .791 OPS. His OPS was 16 points better than average. He has an OPS plus of 116. That's how OPS plus is measured. But as that 2016 season came to an end, and the Astros, of course, would miss the playoffs, he would go on to come back, and ever since, the Astros have not missed the playoffs since 2016. Alex Bregman's second season with the the Astros would be his age 23 season in 2017. He would play 155 games in a season where the Astros would go on to finish with a 101-61 record. They would win 17 more games in the prior season, as they would go on to finish with the best record in their division. This would be the season where Jose Altuve was named the MVP of the season for the year. But looking at how Alex Bregman would fare in that very first 2017 season, his first full year, he would go on to finish with 158 hits in the 155 games he played. That would be 3 more hits than games played, continuing a streak of more hits than games. He had 88 runs on the season. He had 39 doubles in his first full season, which is a lot of doubles. He would go on to finish with 5 triples, which to this day is his career high. He finished with 19 home runs and 17 RBIs, as he more than doubled his output his rookie season in both those categories. He finished with a 284 batting average, which was 20 points better than his rookie season, and he finished with an 827 OPS, which is exactly 36 points better than what he did his rookie year, as he had a 125 OPS plus. As he would go on to play 3 times the amount of games that he did his rookie year, he was basically getting better all around the board. Once the 2017 season came to an end, he would go on to help the Astros make it through the very first round, beating the Boston Red Sox in the division series 3-1. Once they made it to the American League Championship Series, they would face off against the New York Yankees. They would go on to beat the Yankees, as Justin Verlander was named the ALCS MVP in that series. They would go to the World Series, where they would face off against the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Astros would go on to beat the Dodgers 4-3. One of the big turning points in that series was in a Game 5 where it was all tied. It would actually be Alex Bregman's walk-off hit that helped the Astros gain the momentum that they needed in order to win this World Series. It later came out that the Astros cheated, but I mean, the Astros they still were able to get immunity, so they were able to keep the trophy, and they still were able to keep the honor. So this is the only time that Alex Bregman has won a championship in his MLB career, and he was a very big part of that team, by the way, and that was just after his very first season playing in the league. Following his very first World Series championship ring, his only championship win after his first championship appearance, he would come back and play 157 games in his age 24 season in 2018 with the Astros. In this season, the Houston Astros would finish with a 103-59 record, as they had 2 more regular season wins than they had in the season that they had won the World Series. This would be the 4th year in a 5-year stretch that Dallas Keuchel would win the Gold Glove at the pitcher position, and the last time he had done so for the Astros. This would be the 5th year in a row that Jose Altuve won the Silver Slugger for the team as well. But in this season, Alex Bregman would go on to be named an All-Star for the very first time. He would also go on to be named the All-Star Game MVP this season in his very first All-Star season, as in his age 24 season in 2018, he finished with 170 hits in 157 games. That's 13 more hits than games played, making it so that he had more hits than games played for his first 3 seasons in the league. He finished with 105 runs, the first time he would eclipse 100. He had 51 doubles to lead the American League. This is the first time he would lead the American League in a category. Second time he had at least 30 doubles in a season. The first time he eclipsed 50. He would go on to finish with 31 home runs and 103 RBIs. The first time he eclipsed 20 home runs and even 80 RBIs, so big season for him. He would go on to finish with a 286 batting average, which was slightly better than what he had done the year before. He would finish with a 926 OPS, finishing with an OPS plus of 152. In addition to being named an All-Star for the very first time and the All-Star Game MVP, he would go on to he would finish 5th in MVP voting in a year that saw Mookie Betts win the MVP. However, once the Astros made it to the playoffs in an effort to repeat, they would go on to sweep the Cleveland Indians in the first round 3-0 before they lost 4-1 in the American League Championship Series to the Boston Red Sox. So that is how that season would come to an end, as the American League MVP that year, Mookie Betts, went on to help the Red Sox win the World Series that year. But this, of course, would lead into Alex Bregman's 3rd full season and leading into his 2nd All-Star season. In his age 25 season in 2019, he would go on to play 156 games in a season where the Astros finished with a 107-55 record. They would have 4 more wins than the year before, as they would win the AL West for the 3rd year in a row. This would be the most wins that they had put together as a franchise, as even before this 3-year stretch of winning 100 games, they'd only won 100 games one other time in their franchise history. That was in 1998, just to get a sense of how historic this win was. They had never won 107 games as a team. This is the year where Justin Verlander won his Cy Young with the team. Yordan Alvarez would finish with the Rookie of the Year. George Springer would be given the Silver Slugger. Zach Greinke was given the Gold Glove as well. Also, Alex Bregman for the very first time would be given a Silver Slugger in his career, as in his age 25 season, he would finish with 164 hits in 156 games. 8 more hits than games played, making it 4 straight seasons that he's done that. He finished with 122 runs. Second time in his career, he would finish with at least 120 the first time he eclipsed that number. Third time he's had at least 80. He would finish with 37 doubles on the season, making it the 3rd season in a row he finished with at least 35 doubles. He finished with a couple of triples himself. He had 41 home runs and 112 RBIs, the only time in his careers to date that he's eclipsed 40 home runs and 110 RBIs. The second time that he's eclipsed 30 and 100. He would go on to finish with 119 walks. This would be the second time that he's led the American League in a statistical category, and the first and only time in his career he's finished with at least 100 walks in a season. He would finish with a 296 batting average, which to this date is the highest batting average he would put together. He would finish with an OPS of 1015, as this would be the first season it was over 1,000. His on-base percentage at 423 was the highest that it has been to date. His slugging percentage at 592 is also a career high for him to date. His OPS plus would finish at about 162. That would be the highest that he would record, at least in a season till now. In addition to being named an All-Star for the 2nd year in a row and being named a Silver Slugger for the first time. In 2019, he would actually be named the runner-up in the MVP race to Mike Trout, as Mike Trout actually got about 20 more vote points than Alex Bregman, as Bregman did not miss out on the MVP in 2019 by much. But after just missing out on the MVP, he would go on to help lead the Astros to the World Series. But before they got there, they would go on to beat the Rays in 5 in the ALDS. They won it 3-2. They would beat the Yankees in the American League Championship Series in 6, second time in a 3-year stretch they would beat the Yankees in the championship series. They would then go on to lose in the World Series to the Washington Nationals. As of course, after Jose Altuve had won the ALCS MVP, it would be the Nationals who just snuck in with a wild card seed and ended up winning the World Series that year. So that is how the 2019 season would really come to an end for him. But this would transition into Bregman's age 26 season with the team in 2020. And as many would remember, this was a season where COVID was impacting the MLB season, where it shortened the 162-game season to 60 as a delay at the beginning of the season. Also, it expanded the playoff bracket so that more teams could compete in it. But in this season, where they didn't even name all-stars, Bregman would finish with 37 hits in the 42 games he played for an Astros team that would finish with the second-best record in the AL West at 27-31. They would go on to make the playoffs, of course, with their record. But in this season, he would go on to, like I said, he had 37 hits in his 42 games. The first time in his first 5 seasons, he had less hits than games played. He would go on to finish with 12 doubles, 6 home runs, a couple of RBIs, even had a triple on the year. He had a 242 batting average, which is his lowest batting average to date. His OPS plus would be at about 801. The only season that it was lower was his rookie season. But once the season came to an end, the Houston Astros would go into the very first round and beat the Twins 2-0. They would go to the second round where they would beat the Athletics 3-1 to go all the way to the World Series. Once they made it to the World Series, however, they would end up losing, or once they made it to the American League Championship Series, they ended up losing to the Tampa Bay Rays, who ended up going to the World Series as the Rays lost to the Dodgers. But of course, this would transition into the last season that Alex Bregman has played, his 6th season with the Houston Astros. But this season has been an interesting one, as he has only played played 91 games in a season where the Astros finished with a 95-67 record. Looking at what he is coming off this season, Bregman will go on to injure his left quadriceps in a game versus the Rangers, but he would go on to make a couple of appearances in the playoffs. But in the 91 games that he played, he would go on to miss the All-Star game for the second year in a row, because at the first time they were naming All-Stars, and I don't know if he would have been named either anyway, but the second time he would be his season would be plagued with injury. But in the 91 games he played, he had 94 hits, making it so that in 5 of his first 6 seasons he had more hits than games played. He would go on to finish with 17 doubles, 12 home runs, 55 RBIs. Looking at his percentages, he finished with a 270 batting average, which was on the lower end, but still very good for what he has done. His 777 OPS would go on to be the lowest that he's ever recorded in his career. His on-base percentage was 355, was pretty on par with what he had been doing, but his 422 slugging percentage would go on to be his career low, at least in a season that he had put together, beginning to end. Once the Astros season had come to an end, they would go on to beat the Chicago White Sox in the first round of the playoffs in 4. They won it 3-1. But not to mention, this is also a season where Yuli Gurriel won a Gold Glove, Carlos Correa won the Platinum Glove and the Gold Glove. But after beating the White Sox in the first round, the Astros would beat the Red Sox in 6 in the second round. Once they would beat them, they would make it to the World Series for the third time in a 5-year stretch since they won the first time. They would go on to lose to the Atlanta Braves in 6, and this would be the last MLB season. That is the last game that had actually been played to date, as the MLB season is around the corner. It actually starts next week, but as we get into that, that is what Alex Bregman's career is looking like as we are getting ready to enter yet another season of baseball, as he's about to enter his 7th season with the Houston Astros. I, of course, want to take this time to, of course, acknowledge the fact that Alex Bregman is still one of the best players in baseball. I think once he's back from the injury bug, I think that he'll be fine as he gets right into his groove. As he turns 28 today, he's still a couple of years away from 30, and I still think that he has a lot of potential to get a lot better as he ages and as he sees more pitches. But that is virtually all I have for you today. I want to thank the Baseball Reference website, and I do want to thank the MLB website and ESPN websites as well for giving me all the facts and figures that I need. Without them, I wouldn't be able to do this. And of course, once all of today's exhibitions and matchups are done, I'm going to come back tomorrow on Thursday, March 31st for another episode of The Elite. And of course, hopefully by this time next year, I'll have a lot more to say about Alex Bregman. If he's still on this list next year, I imagine he will be. But please get a chance to watch him if you can. He's wearing number 2 for the Astros, and he's probably going to give... I highly doubt that his hit versus the LA Dodgers is going to be the last super big, crazy moment that you see from Alex Bregman in a big game like that. Thanks for listening. I really do hope all is well, and I'll catch you with more tomorrow and even a couple more profiles after this. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you with more. I'm James Sims, and this is The Elite. Peace out.